Celebrated on the fourth Thursday of the month of November, Thanksgiving is a holiday that can mean something different for you, depending on where you are from and those traditions that were passed down to you or those that you have created with your family and friends. This episode of California True Crime, we take a look at a unique California tradition that has been going on for over 70 years in El Cajon, California, as well as our own traditions that make up our holiday season and share being thankful for another episode of California True Crime.
Welcome to this episode of California True Crime. This episode, we're going to talk about a pretty big tradition in El Cajon, California that we had never heard of before, or at least I hadn't.
No, I hadn't either, actually.
And then we're also going to talk about some of our traditions and what we do, and then some of our listeners' traditions. And I think there will be some debate during those because there are some pretty good ones people talked about. So with me for this episode are Sean and Charles. Are you guys excited for this one?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this holiday. It is a weird to have another episode where there is no horrible crime.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's okay for the holidays.
It's to take a break
right.
A little bit.
I am sad there's no Fresno Nightcrawler issue with Thanksgiving, though.
He might, I mean, I all of a sudden gave him a gender. Yeah.
No, they.
Might have to create a new tradition.
Thanksgiving crawler?
Yeah. So this is a time of year I think a lot of people celebrate Thanksgiving in the United States. It's been going on for a long time.
Yeah, it actually is the time to celebrate Thanksgiving.
It's a controversial holiday. What do you guys do? Sean, what do you do for Thanksgiving?
It matters because families, different places, but one thing we were doing for a while was my friends would come over because there's football on all day, and we would make a breakfast pizza. So it's like we'd get like Bobolis or whatever they are and make a white sauce. My friend Brooke used to make it from scratch, like a gravy sauce with cheese and eggs and just like breakfast pizza. And then after Thanksgiving, usually the day after Thanksgiving, with everyone in town, because a lot of people come home for the holidays, we do a big poker night with just friends, and it's a lot of fun. People we haven't seen for a year and lose some money.
So you do the traditional big dinner too?
Yeah, but it's not my favorite food. So my wife will make cheesy grits. That's like it's not like we started cheesy grits, but we started using it in our Thanksgivings where it's just like grits that have so much cheese. They're just giant like blocks. They look like cheese brownies, but they're super good.
Yeah.
Is your family from the South?
Nope. I mean, my wife's nope. No one. I mean, my mom was from Iowa. I don't know.
It's just it's an odd, like you don't often see grits around California.
Yeah, I mean,
or I don't.
Yeah, it's just my family, and like it wasn't like a decision from the elders of the family. It was just us like, hey, let's make this, let's try this, and it turned out pretty good.
That's an awesome tradition though.
Yeah.
Now forever the family will be doing cheesy grits.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I've heard a lot about them, and I hear there's going to be a time in December where I actually get to try them, so I'm excited.
I'll have her make 19 batches at Thanksgiving, and we can eat them forever.
Charles, how about you?
Yeah, I do a lot of the cooking for Thanksgiving, so I enjoy, and it is actually, aside from Halloween, my favorite holiday. Those are my two. I love Halloween a lot, but I really, really enjoy Thanksgiving more than Christmas. I know that's a point of contention amongst us. I know we've had this conversation a lot, but yeah, I do the traditional, like the turkey dinner with the mashed potatoes and stuff. The vegetables I don't care about. It's turkey and mashed potatoes, rolls, and stuffing, and then if somebody comes over and wants to bring cranberry sauce and stuff, which I don't care about, but
So I don't know if we've ever talked about it on the podcast, but Charles and I are actually married.
What?
So a lot of your traditions are actually my
Yes.
traditions. And this
Surprise.
starts. Yeah, we do a lot of the cooking. We actually in our family split up into
Mains and desserts.
2 different groups.
Right. So I'm
And-
on the mains team in our family.
I'm on desserts. So everybody has their role. I don't know how this happened, but we all have like specific committees we're in charge
Because
of.
we have a very small kitchen and not everyone can use it at the exact same time. So I would do the cooking in the morning and then you do desserts like the night before.
Yeah, desserts is made up of me and my brother, and we're insomniacs and always have been. So we do a lot of cooking in the middle of the night. So it works out for us.
That's cool.
The other big tradition, I mean, like we have traditions like when I was from a kid, like my big tradition I remember growing up was spending time between like my mom's family and my dad's family. So I'd go to my dad's family for Thanksgiving and then have second Thanksgiving with my mom's family. And then some years going to like third Thanksgiving with my dad's sister's family and stuff. But one of the fun traditions that actually we started in our family recently, probably about 6 years ago, is we have a family knife throwing tournament. We take the leftover pumpkins from Halloween. We actually stopped carving pumpkins for this reason. And then after dinner and everybody's had their fill, we go out in the backyard and have set up targets and throw a set of throwing knives. And I do have an axe this year, which I'm really looking forward to trying out.
Do you have ninja stars yet?
No, not yet. Those are illegal in California. And
I didn't even know that.
I didn't know either.
Well, you can do like how the kids used to make them out of paper in school, and you could probably like paper mache them enough where they become hard enough to puncture a pumpkin.
Oh, we could. So we, that's been a big tradition in our family.
It's too bad we can't use ninja stars legally, because this time of year also starts our other tradition, which we watch a certain amount of movies, which I think people do. And in our family, our Thanksgiving Christmas movie is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle trilogy. So we'll start the first one this weekend. So ninja stars would be great.
Yeah, that's right. And we do watch all 3. You can't skimp out on number 3. You have to watch it.
I don't.
Turtles in Time.
But isn't there also are you adding the new one in at all?
We sometimes watch it, but it's not part of the
Okay.
tradition. Then we move on to things like The Burbs.
That's a New Year's
That's
movie.
New Year's, so I guess we make it that far.
And foreshadowing, we will probably be doing an episode on one of my favorite Christmas movies.
Yes, I'm very excited for that one. It's actually a movie I haven't seen.
We'll get to that when we get to it.
Do you have a Thanksgiving movie that you like?
No.
I really like the movie Dutch. I don't know if anyone's seen that. I always watch it
I
every
have.
Oh
Thanksgiving.
yeah, that's a good movie. One other thing though, to go to fight with Charles, is a tradition that we do have is that the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, we go buy our Christmas tree and put it up. We already have our Christmas lights up. Before my wife and I had kids, my wife would hand out Halloween candy while I was putting up the Christmas lights in the house. But now that we have kids, I don't want to ruin Halloween, so I wait until November 1st. I wait for the outside lights so I don't look crazy until the day after Thanksgiving.
When does the inside stuff go up?
November 1st.
November 1st. So
the tree, we buy it fresh.
Right.
So we have to wait until they get them we don't go cut it down, but we just wait till the lots get them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's always the Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
And it's not like you are like a huge fan of Christmas.
Yeah, I usually start Christmas music around Labor Day.
And not in an ironic sort of way. It's like, haha, it's Christmas. You really enjoy Christmas music.
Yeah, I enjoy all Christmas traditions. Well, I mean, I don't know all of them. I enjoy all my own,
Right.
And most of everything.
So, and on the scale of holidays, where does Thanksgiving rank for you guys?
To me, it's you could call Christmas and Thanksgiving the holiday. It's like a 2-month thing for me. So they group together almost, because I don't want Christmas. Sure, Christmas is fine with, presents and being with the family, but the whole 2 months that I've made the holidays is all part of it.
So you don't separate into it's distinct. It's Thanksgiving. Now Thanksgiving is over. now we start Christmas.
No, it's now Halloween's over. Now we start the holidays. And I can understand Thanksgiving and Christmas are two different things.
Right.
But it's all part of a long 2 months and then I take everything down January 1st.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. I enjoy a lot of things about Christmas. It sounds cliche, but the materialism, I'm not a huge fan of crowds or going to like the mall and doing shopping, which I love Amazon for, but I like the family aspects, and I've enjoyed some like traditions that we've started at Christmas time, but I really like Thanksgiving. I think if I could skip Christmas and just do Thanksgiving again, I would 100% love it. I really, not just for the food, obviously.
But you could start that with your own family.
We don't celebrate.
No, he really couldn't.
No.
I'm a Christmas girl all the way, so out of respect, marriage is about compromise.
Yeah.
I wait until after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's actually a tradition in our house. I've bent a little bit, but I don't like Christmas music in general. Some of it's okay, but I don't like it played except for Christmas time. So no decorations in our house until I'd love for if it was like December 1st, but it has slowly encroached until so now I get after Thanksgiving, the full 24 hours after Thanksgiving, that Saturday is when stuff starts getting pulled out and looked at to be put up. And I'm all right with that.
Sorry, I brought up Christmas so much.
No, I know. And now
he's not as tough as he seems. He'll see me look at something for Christmas and he'll purchase it for me. So it's not as rigid as he thinks he is. The other thing that I discovered when we were looking for reasons to like Thanksgiving was that one of the first Thanksgiving, I guess, federally, was put by proclamation by Abraham Lincoln. And in that, one of the reasons he put it forth was to celebrate Civil War victories.
Oh, okay.
Which, in 2019, obviously, isn't a big deal, I wouldn't think, for anybody, but always good reason to celebrate Civil War victories.
Yeah, maybe I'll add that into my traditions now.
Although I thought it was weird, too, that Thanksgiving actually has that there are other countries, we always think of it as an American holiday, but there are other countries that celebrate a version of a Thanksgiving holiday, obviously for different reasons and different traditions and different histories, but that idea of stopping and giving thanks for something and for your life and for all the good things, I think it's a good tradition to have.
And when I was doing some research for this, I did find there are some interesting Thanksgiving traditions all through California. The site that I found these were goldenstatemortgage.com, just so you know, but it's
that realtor connection, right?
Yeah, but one of them that was interesting, this is more like for the cities. In San Diego, they do Surfin' Santa at Seaport Village. I guess they'll be on some, Santa's in a Hawaiian shirt and some board shorts, and they'll drive a boat around with Christmas lights all over it. Another good one is not a 9-ton sandcastle at the St. Regis Monarch Beach in Dana Point, and that is a huge sandcastle. But but if you're inland, you get some snow. But we've got the coast, so there's a lot of California that never sees any snow. So this is
right. Most of us in the valley, or we don't.
I think last time it snowed was probably over 15 years ago, and you see it, but nothing ever sticks.
Right.
One of the biggest Thanksgiving traditions in California is one we just found out about and can't believe we've never heard of before. Since 1947, hundreds of thousands of people have gathered in the small town of El Cajon, California, to watch a parade called the Mother Goose Parade. With unique floats, it has become a tradition for lots of people, especially those living in and around San Diego. El Cajon, according to Google Maps, is about 16 miles east of San Diego. It's near Interstate 8, a highway that runs from San Diego, then east towards Arizona. Interstate 8 is a relatively new highway. Building started on it in 1957 and finished in the late 1970s. This is only important because in 1947, when this parade started, it was an immediate success, and people flowed into El Cajon, but they wouldn't even have had this highway to drive through at the time. And I don't know if this is interesting to most people, but it's just interesting to me.
Well, yeah, because it makes sense if you're near a major thoroughfare and there's like a tourist. I won't say a tourist attraction. We had a tourist attraction. Parade can be a tourist attraction.
Yeah.
But it's a lot different than if there's not a major thoroughfare and people have. It's a little bit more of a struggle to get there, you know. And the fact that this was a huge deal, or is a huge deal, and people are coming even in an early time.
And the traffic in and out has become, and based on the articles I read, part of the tradition.
Oh, it's just
take you a
suffering
couple
through.
hours just to get through El Cajon. Yeah.
Oh wow.
El Cajon became a city in 1912, but it has a history that goes back farther than that. It's in a valley surrounded by mountains and foothills. So El Cajon literally means in Spanish the drawer or box. And this name was given to this area because it's a valley, so it sits at the bottom of these mountains and foothills in a box-like shape. Like many other areas in California, parts of El Cajon were given to the Catholic Church in a land grant. They used the valley for agriculture and as a place for cattle to roam. During the time of Mexican control, those land grants were given to rich families, often of Spanish descent, and when California gained its independence, it upheld those land grants. El Cajon in 1947, when the parade is first conceived, is a very small town, especially compared to today. In 1950, the population, according to the United States Census, was almost 6,000 people. Today, the population of El Cajon is over 100,000.
That's a big jump. I mean, granted, it's 50 years, but to go from 6,000 to 100,000, and that's a huge increase of.
That's a lot of space that needs to be
Right.
figured out where people live and everything like that.
Schools and fire departments,
Yeah.
more police.
I think there's a lot of reasons for this. World War II, there were some bases in San Diego, so people moved around. But one of the things I saw over and over was that this parade really put El Cajon on the map as a place. And so I don't know if people moved there because of that reason or...
They just couldn't leave because of the traffic.
Yeah.
Well, we live here now, kids. Well, and you, I think a big part with it's being that close to San Diego.
Yeah.
You know, if I work in San Diego, that gives me, and I think a lot of places, we've talked about this before in California, you have bigger cities like San Diego, San Francisco, Sacramento, and then around them you have all of these pocket communities kind of spring up and people move to those over time.
And there's a lot of that around San Diego, like National City and a few other places. El Cajon is actually known for some famous people coming from there. Jimmy Johnson, the famed NASCAR driver, is from here, and they have a day each year to celebrate and honor him. It's June 17th, in case anyone wants to add that to their personal holidays. I don't know that much about NASCAR, so.
My brother actually celebrates Jimmy Johnson Day, actually.
Nice. It would be cool to have your own day. Barry Zito, the baseball pitcher, he played for the Oakland A's and also the much better team, the San Francisco Giants. He lived in El Cajon. He actually pitched for a high school in El Cajon called Grossmont High School. And I looked this high school up. It looks like a movie high school. I'll put pictures of it up because it's like a dream high school. It's humongous. It's just amazing looking. It made me want to go back to high school.
Is it one of those ones that look like a college campus, and it's...
Yeah, all their high schools had kind of like, some of them had just beautiful science. They look like science buildings, and it blew my mind. Also, there's this guy some people might have heard of. I think he's in music or something. His name is Frank Zappa. He's from El Cajon or lived there for a time. And in an article we'll put up, if anyone's interested, from the San Diego Reader. And it really connects Zappa's connection to music to El Cajon and the surrounding areas. He bought his first record player in a place called Valley Music in El Cajon, and that kind of set him, it sounded like, on his path. He also attended Grossmont High School for a time, and like I said, I'll put pics up of that, because more than anything, I'm impressed by this high school.
Just for the record, you do know who Frank Zappa is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
Just being sarcastic. And the best for last, this is for Charles. Ryan Hansen is from here. Ryan Hansen is an actor from one of your favorite shows.
Yeah, I was very excited about this. He plays Dick Casablancas on Veronica Mars. And if you have not watched Veronica Mars, we're going to start another podcast, a California true crime spinoff where we watch Veronica Mars with Sean because he's never
Never seen it.
It's amazing. I'm going to say Veronica Mars one more time because it's a great show. And if you've never watched it, Dick Casablancas is kind of like a goof.
He looks like he's from San Diego.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Which makes sense. I mean, it's just funny that he's from there.
Did he go to Grossmont High School?
He did not. I became obsessed with these high schools. He went to another really nice high school in the area called Valhalla High School.
Oh, whoa.
And it has like a big, it has like Mjolnir and everything.
Oh.
Wait, their high school is called Valhalla. That's, wow.
And then the most important person who came from El Cajon is our good friend Kathy, who listens to the show. She grew up there.
Yeah, I did. I've known Kathy. I've worked with her. She's one of my very best friends. And over a conversation while playing bar trivia one night, she listens to our podcast and asked us what we were doing. We had started to talk about we were going to do this episode about this Mother Goose Parade. And she goes, "Oh, in El Cajon." And I said, "Yes, how did you?" And I found out that I never asked her where she grew up. And she grew up in El Cajon. And her family is kind of connected to the history. Her grandfather was actually one of the first people to work in. He worked for the. I apologize, Cassie, for getting this wrong, but he worked actually for the city in water reclamation and stuff, and was actually one of the first people in Southern California to fight for water conservation in California. And she actually just went on a trip, and I got to see pictures of like where she grew up and stuff. And it's a really pretty area. I can see why the population exploded other than the traffic, because it really is a nice area.
We do not know what high school she went to, though.
But,
No.
Right?
Kathy, if you hear this, can you tell us which high school you go to? Please email us
very
at
important.
calitruecrime@gmail.com. Thank you.
So if you're in the area of El Cajon and you're looking for things to do, there's a casino and resort called Cajon Casino. There's also a brewery called the Burning Beard Brewery and several museums that sound pretty amazing. There's also a place called the Water Conservation Garden, which looked really beautiful. So just some places to go see. Hopefully we can go to that area sometime.
Besides Grossmont.
Yes, besides the high schools, which you obviously need to. I sound like we must live in the middle of nowhere, and our high school is terrible. But I can't imagine going to a high school like this.
Do I smell California True Crime's first official meetup?
Road trip. If it's by Cajon Casino, I'm fine with it.
I'm just gonna start a new podcast where I
Yeah.
review high schools.
High schools.
Yeah. And you can just call me from the casino and I'll chime in.
So in 1947, according to the El Cajon website, a man named Thomas Wigton Jr. came up with the idea to have a parade that would be Mother Goose themed. Thomas Wigton Jr. was a businessman in the area. He owned a chain of women's clothes shops. I couldn't really find very much about him, but he worked with the Chamber of Commerce to put this idea together. And they wanted it to be a gift to the children in the area. So I couldn't find very much about the people who created the parade. We were kind of interested in why they chose Mother Goose as the theme. And the only thing I could see was that maybe it was popular at the time. In the newspapers, when I did the research, there were a lot of ads for the book or for recordings of Mother Goose rhymes. There were also other Mother Goose parades back east, though the El Cajon parade was said to be the only one of its kind west of the Mississippi.
Do you know if Wigton Jr. was from the East and moved there? Like, was it a tradition for himself, maybe?
There really wasn't very much
on him.
For being such a big parade and stuff, there wasn't that much history in general, but there wasn't very much on him.
Okay.
Other than, he was a businessman, and eventually he gets Businessman of the Year, I think. But there's just not much why he came up with this. He was in the car driving. Much past that, I don't know.
And then we do have some, when we got to talking about this, that was the one of the things that really stuck out was that idea of Mother Goose, rather than like the Thanksgiving holiday or centered around a character. And so we did a little research on Mother Goose, and I think most of us are familiar with the concept of Mother Goose or the idea of that character in fairy tales and nursery rhymes. But Mother Goose is a fictional woman, and she's used as a source of traditional songs and nursery rhymes. Oftentimes, she's pictured as an older woman or like a crone, like with a beaked nose, riding around on the back of a goose. Sometimes she's actually seen as an anthropomorphic goose. So she's like an old goose, like wearing a like head covering, telling stories to kids, or sitting on a clutch of eggs.
That seems to be mainly what they used for the parade, was
the
an actual
goose.
Yeah.
And that becomes a lot more popular the later, when you start looking into some of the stories, the later the stories, the more she is actually a goose character rather than, I won't say like a witch-like character, but we'll get to it because there's some odd stories around Mother Goose. When she first appeared, it's a bit, it's kind of a bit of a mystery. And this is also something that's debated almost as long as the stories have been around. She begins to be popularized really in the 17th century. By the 1650s, a book by the name of Conte de la Mer, which, and my French is terrible, I'm sorry about that. It's a Mother Goose-like story, and it shows that these stories, Mother Goose keeps coming up in this story in 1650, and it's used in such a way that people of the era would know it. So by 1650, the term Mother Goose is already being really, really used in a lot of nursery rhymes. And it seems that the earliest reference that scholars have found is somewhere in the 1620s, and it's from France. So there are a few other theories put forth from where this character comes from. There's also some stories that Mother Goose has taken from a real character. So there was a real person that was the inspiration. And this goes back to like King Robert II of France's wife, Bertha the Spinner, also known as Goose-Footed Bertha. I didn't necessarily look into why she was called goose-footed, but you can imagine. It was said that she was to have told stories to children to entertain them. Some have claimed that Mother Goose was also connected to Charlemagne, his mother, and I apologize for the pronunciation, but it's Bertrada of Leon. She's also called Goose-Footed Queen. Charlemagne, if you're not familiar, is the first Holy Roman Emperor and probably one of the most important kings in Europe. Sorry, I'm somewhat of a history geek on that. Some also theories have said that she could even date back to stories of Queen Sheba, who was from the Judeo-Christian Bible. Queen Sheba was the queen that brought riddles to King David and the Israelites. There is actually no evidence at all of any of these connections whatsoever. These are just stories that are told after people are looking for a connection where there probably isn't one. But the most famous connection, and I thought this was kind of neat, and this directly ties into the United States, obviously. There is a person from Boston who supposedly was the quote unquote real Mother Goose. It's a woman named Elizabeth Foster Goose who lived from 1690 to 1758. She was married to a man named Isaac Goose and was already had already been previously married. She had 6 kids. And when she marries Isaac, their family numbers 12. So that total there are 10 kids in their family. Isaac will eventually die. And after he dies, his wife Elizabeth goes to live with one of their daughters. And by this time, the daughter that her kids have, with 10 kids in the family, there's a lot of grandchildren. So the legend is that Elizabeth was telling stories to their grandkids and soon attracted a ton of neighborhood kids. And she would tell these stories and these nursery rhymes to entertain all these kids. Well, her daughter's husband is a publisher who collects all these stories and publishes the first Mother Goose book. However, that is absolutely false. There is no evidence that this happens at all. By the time if this person was real and this is happening, there had already been publications in the United States for Mother Goose books. They'd already been published in France and had made its way to England. So this name is just a name that gets constantly recycled. In fact, some of the leading authorities of nursery lore, and I looked this up, there's actually a whole subset of historians and
let's join,
right, that do nothing but study nursery rhymes. They say there really was never any person, they couldn't find any evidence that this Elizabeth Goose actually was, and the prevailing theory is it was a way that a publisher could sell more books. You know, it's a fun legend that you can attach to, and people will get excited. And it's something local, and then it carries on. So I guess the earliest person we could find that physically published a book on Mother Goose, which I know this is kind of a meandering way away from our parade, but to me, this goes right to the heart of like why it's Mother Goose, is because it is such a recognizable figure, and it's in the public domain, which means you don't have to pay for royalties. And so it's easier than if like I want to have a parade with Mickey Mouse and I have to pay Disney, but this is a public domain character, and it's an instantly recognizable character. I think if you say Mother Goose, you see it in your, like you said, an anthropomorphized goose. But it's and again, my pronunciation, I apologize. It's Charles Perrault is a French author and intellectual. He's known as one of the fathers of literary fairy tale genre. So he actually writes. He's one of the first people in Europe to really collect all of these fairy tales and stories. I think most people were familiar with the Brothers Grimm. We hear Brothers Grimm when we think about like fairy tales. This guy actually wrote 100 years before the Grimm brothers started collecting their stories, and a lot of the stories that they pick up had already been in circulation because of Charles's book early. He actually, in his book, Mother Goose is one of the characters that tells a lot of the stories, and in his book titled Tales of My Mother Goose, he actually starts collecting some of the stories that we really will start to understand in our collective unconscious as far as popular culture goes. That book then gets translated. It gets its first English translation in 1729 by a guy named Robert Sammer, who titles his books Histories of the Tales of the Past Told by Mother Goose. This is actually the first time that stories like Sleeping Beauty, Little Red Riding Hood, Puss in Boots, and Cinderella are ever seen in English, which again, going forward, these are the stories that companies like Disney will then take over because they're in the public domain and they resonate with people. And just the last couple interesting things I found about Mother Goose in general, because in my brain, she's always been the anthropomorphized goose that talks. But in a lot of the original stories, she's a witch or a old woman that has magical powers. And in some of the original stories, she's actually connected to making a deal with the devil, almost like a Faustian deal, and that the stories revolve around her either tricking the devil or getting out of the deal in some way with her magical powers. So it takes on not a sinister, she's not like an evil witch, like the Baba Yaga or something like that, but just more of a trickster, almost like a clown.
With all that history, you forgot to mention Granny Goose chips making quality snacks since 1946.
Oh, yeah.
Such as the sour cream and onion. Those are some of my favorite chips. And I know it's not Mother, but it's Granny Goose. But still,
she's on she's
related.
It's like a goose with a little bonnet.
Yeah, it's Mother Goose.
Yeah, so I like those chips.
Well, that makes sense then that they wouldn't have to pay for the stories to use for the parade. That would be a logical reason. They choose Mother Goose. The other thing I think is they wanted something wholesome because during the years the parade starts to change, and that's one of the things that's debated in the newspaper.
Does it get creepy or
no? There's just the 80s and 90s have different things, and
No, actually,
someone's always upset about it. So
okay, yeah.
Going back to my friend Kathy, when we talked about when we talked about the parade, she had to sync memories of like dressing in costume and like as nursery rhyme characters and being on one of the floats, and it was like a big deal at the time. And again, that I would imagine being that wholesome theme, the Mother Goose theme, it's an easy one for everybody to rally around.
And it's meant to be specifically for kids. That was the whole point, I think, of it. So this is really aimed at that.
Right. He at some point he's quoted as saying this was a gift to the children of El Cajon.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Christine, and I'd like to introduce you to the True Crime Files podcast, a bi-weekly podcast that focuses on mysterious disappearances and unsolved murders. Every 2 weeks, we'll be releasing an episode that'll help you get to know a case really well without having to invest a lot of your time. Derived from the articles up on the True Crime Files website, you'll find that our show covers a diversity of victims and perspectives. You'll probably also notice that our episodes are narrated by Scott Fuller from the Frozen Truth and Status Pending podcasts. Be sure to subscribe to the True Crime Files today so that you never miss an episode. Thanks so much for listening, being a part of our true crime community, and helping to shine a light on cases that might otherwise be overlooked or underreported.
So the first parade in El Cajon happens in 1947. The parade runs for 3 miles, and it runs down Main Street. And on this year, the parade can only be described as just a grand success. About 25,000 people flood the streets of El Cajon to watch this parade. And remember, this is a city of only about 6,000. So right off the bat, this thing is huge.
It's like the Woodstock of parades right here.
Especially in, like, where do they... just logistically, like where do they park and them lining the street. Can you imagine being a kid at the time and just seeing the sea of people?
Yeah, I have no idea. I tried to look up hotels and stuff at the time, and it's just not a big town, especially then. I can't. I think people come in for the day and then they leave.
Well, yeah, and 6,000 people. You have a hotel, maybe.
Yeah. In 1948, the following year, the parade was even bigger. The basic premise is that each float in the parade would honor a different Mother Goose rhyme. And while the theme kind of changes, there's like a sub-theme every year. But the idea that each float would be its own unique, separate thing stayed. In 1948, there were 50 floats, and the parade committee went to great lengths to make sure there weren't any commercial entities either. So it wasn't, sometimes you'll see in parades, they'll have big signs and they're advertising, or you might send, I don't know, a mascot or something from your business. They really wanted to keep that out of it. There are also bands from all around the area in the parades and dance groups, the sort of thing you see in a lot of parades, including the Macy's Day Parade.
Did Zappa ever make it in to the parade?
I didn't
do you know?
see anything about that. I feel like they would have written it, but they were always kind of cagey. They would say celebrities a lot, but then not name the celebrities.
Did Dick Casablanca? I mean, sorry, it's always going to be Dick Casablanca.
I didn't see him in there either, so I don't know. Hopefully someday. The parade always takes place the Sunday before Thanksgiving. This way it opens up the holiday season. You know, you don't have to take a break from Thanksgiving or a family to go there. You can go to the parade and then still have a normal
I think that's
week.
neat. And it's the idea is they're planning. It is really for families, and it's for the community to share. So the idea that the holiday season is so stressful with people splitting times between families, but this is a time before all of that rush that you can go and enjoy something. I think it's really fun.
The parade is also, usually I saw it in the evening or anywhere from like late afternoon to evening. During the second year in 48, they expected 75,000 people and 125,000 people show up. And this is basically a theme throughout all the years. They expect a certain amount of people and way more people show up.
You go from a town of 6,000 to, for one day, 125,000 people.
Well, in 1 year, you go from 25,000
right.
to adding another 100,000 on top of that in 1 year.
God.
Word of mouth about Mother Goose was big back then.
Yeah.
And this is not, I mean, this is you said 1940, so this is 48 is the very next year. But I can, the World War II's over. Everybody is, I won't say everyone, but, there's a renewed sense maybe of prosperity for a lot of people. With San Diego being that close, that this is a fun thing that families can do, that hopeful kind of rejuvenation after, the suffering of the war and the rationing and stuff like that. And now we're starting to, that stereotypical 50s kind of mentality is starting to, I guess, middle class, affluent people that can afford to travel outside of a town.
Yeah, and in its height, as it keeps going, it will have anywhere from, I think the most I saw was 450,000 people. So every year it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
But I guess the population of San Diego it's over 1 million. So you've got, I think that's just the city of San Diego. So you have 450,000. All those people, because it's close to San Diego, could be like, hey, let's go to the parade. And that's a lot of people to think, hey, let's go to the parade, So I could see it. It's just still thinking about a small town holding 450 people on some parade street. It's just crazy.
Yeah, you look at, like, when you see parades on TV, and I mean, that's a tradition that we really didn't talk about earlier, but that idea of sitting down and watching, like, the Thanksgiving Day parade or the Rose Parade here in California on New Year's, and you look at some of those places and see, like, the Macy's Day Parade. That's in New York. Okay, the parade's huge and there's millions of people and stuff, but it's New York. You kind of expect that. Mm-hmm. The Rose Parade's the same in Pasadena.
Well, this gets compared a lot throughout the years when I was researching this, because there's not a lot of stuff just on this, so I had to go through each year in the newspaper. It gets compared a lot to the Rose Parade because it's pretty big. I mean, it doesn't use roses and things like that, but the number of people. And it really is only 2 hours from Los Angeles. as well, which is not that far for some people to say, I'm going to go to a parade. Yeah. And eventually this gets played on TV in the San Diego area and in the LA area, is my understanding. So something they might see and decide to go.
Right.
Probably not right here in 1950, but eventually.
No, and travel. And like you said, it's not crazy to think, a couple hour drive for anywhere in Southern California and be there.
So I won't go over every year. I'll just hit some highlights. In 1949, for instance, Santa Claus came to the parade by jumping out of an airplane. I've never seen that, but it must have been pretty amazing.
That would be amazing.
I'll also post pictures because the parade have princesses, and during each year, the papers have a lot of pictures of those because I use the local paper. It has to be pretty cool too to be the princess or the queen. I think that she gets called Cinderella. So that's the part she plays when she wins, because this parade is so massive. It's not like a little town parade. The person chosen to be princess actually is chosen to play Cinderella, as I said. The newspaper said there was a month-long contest to be princess that ended with a popular vote. The other people who didn't win were part of the princess's court, and they, I think, came either right before Santa at the end of the parade or almost. It was a really big deal, this float. This sentence described the process, just one of my favorite sentences I've ever read. I don't know why. But, quote, spirited competition surrounds the naming of the princess, and many ingenious plans are evolved to obtain votes for the various candidates. It really sounds like an all-out political...
So, and it's just really just like a popular vote, like student body president, or... I think that there's something amazing about that.
Sounds like a lot of work, but yeah.
Right.
By the 1950s, there's easily 200 plus attending. Like I said, over the years, it gets bigger and bigger. So by the 60s, it's 400,000 plus. And it's nearest to Los Angeles and Hollywood. So people start being picked as Grand Marshal to the parade, start to get kind of fancy as well, at least for the time. In 1955, Governor Goodwin J. Knight was one of the Grand Marshals. Other celebrities were Clint Walker of the TV show Cheyenne.
Missed it.
I didn't. I actually like Cheyenne.
The paper also said a man named Monty Hall, who I assumed was the Monty Hall, but when I did some research, I'm not so sure. He also lived in or near El Cajon, and he was in the parade for several years.
The game show host from the original Let's Make a Deal.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm not exactly sure. In this area, there was a place called Monty Hall's Playland, and it had rides. It was like a small, I don't want to say Disneyland. I couldn't see that many pictures of it.
Amusement park.
But yeah, I guess this guy named Monty Montana would go around. He would do tricks as a cowboy with roping and stuff like that. And he had a horse named Rex. So it seems like kind of a thing in the area. Although I did see that there was also another part of it where he had like a sidekick called Uncle Russ. And somebody had said that Uncle Russ was a thing in the United States at the time in different I guess they would go around and they called it Let's Pretend with Uncle Russ. And this happened in several states, not with the same Russ character, but with others. So I don't know if this is a play on, I'm not really sure what was happening here, but I think that's the Monty Hall they're talking about in the parade.
The Monty Montana was like a trick rider and a trick roper. I actually saw him when I was a kid.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He was older, was at an actually Grand National rodeo. I went with my family, and he was cool. It was like he came in and did trick roping and jumped through lassos and stuff, and it was really, really impressive. So
is Monty Hall and Monty Montana are two different people then?
Yeah, is that?
Well, they both have the name Monty Hall. This Monty Montana person goes by different names, and they both spell their name differently as well. So when I looked up Monty Hall, he spells his name, I had always seen it with a Y, but I guess he also sometimes spelled it with an E, as this guy did. And the newspaper didn't specify who it was. It just said Monty Hall. And since there's a Monty Hall's Playland from the Monty Montana guy, I assumed maybe it was that guy. So I don't know. It could be either.
Okay.
Which would be exciting for the people.
Yeah.
So maybe someone out there knows. Maybe Kathy will know. I don't know.
Right. If you're listening to this and know which Monty Hall it is that was the Grand Marshal of the El Cajon Mother's Goose Parade, please drop us a line at calitruecrime@gmail.com. Hit us up on Twitter, or Instagram, or Facebook.
This also gets so big that the governor of Arizona also participates, as do, they said Arizona units. So I don't know if that meant military or certain people from Arizona, but I think that probably has to do a little bit with the Interstate 8 being connected. The year 1955, about 3,500 people participated in the parade, so just were in the parade, which is a pretty massive thing for this small town. More famous people in the parade were Barbara Rush. She was, I guess, a movie star. She was in a movie called It Came From Outer Space.
Yes.
And she also played a character in the Batman series called Nora Clavicle, which is a good name.
In the 66 Batman series.
Yeah.
Right?
They had National City's Mr. Sunman unit, which I tried to look up and couldn't find, but sounded amazing. So hopefully someone knows what that is. Lassie and Timmy were in the parade.
Wow. That's
Right?
a big one.
That's a big time.
Grant Sullivan, who was a character in a TV series called Pony Express. He was also in a movie called Captain Video and the Video Rangers.
Yeah.
It looked amazing, as well as in Lost in Space.
Yeah, the Captain Video, actually, it's if you're a fan of old science fiction, they're really fun to watch.
One of the big people that they mentioned in the paper through the years was this character named Sleepy Bear, which it took me some time to figure out who that was. He was actually a character, I think, in the Travelodge commercials. And I have a bunch of pictures of him I'll put up. But it was like this kind of bear, and they made all kinds of stuff like for kids to hand out at Travelodge.
Like a bear wearing like a nightcap.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Peanut. And over the years, they do start to allow, it's one of the things that changes, businesses. And so Mr. Peanut was there. They had animals from the San Diego Zoo. There was a whole article about Shamu the whale being there, which I assumed.
Like the actual whale?
It just says Shamu in the paper. I'm going to assume it's someone dressed as a whale.
I don't know. I have watched Blackfish, so
Right.
after watching that,
I mean, there's this many people coming maybe to see an actual whale on like a see-through diesel truck. I don't know.
stranger things have happened.
It's like do they bring King Tut through it like they used to do in like grocery store parking lots?
Oh, I forgot about that.
But those were, do you remember?
Well, he wasn't actually there, but
no, but I remember seeing the grocery store parking lot, a great white shark, a freeze-dried great white shark.
We need to do episodes on grocery store parking lots soon.
Oh man, that was big time.
The Robin Hood band from Hollywood was there. Pat Blair from Daniel Boone. That's a woman. She was also in an ABC after-school special, so probably definitely saw her in something. The general manager of the Padres was there one year, and they handed out baseballs to all the kids, which would have been pretty cool. Martin Milner from Adam 12.
I used to watch that. I mean, again, not an original. I'm not that old, but I did watch that show in syndication.
A big year, one of the biggest years, and I saw a lot of stuff say that this is one of the years that attendance really spiked, but it seemed like it was spiking already. But Mickey and Minnie Mouse were grand marshals, so Disney actually comes to the parade. Part of the Partridge Family, didn't say what part, but part of them.
It doesn't matter. All the Partridge,
the bottom half.
The Partridge Family are wonderful.
A 55-foot Pillsbury Doughboy.
Awesome.
Like a balloon? I mean, it's kind of right.
It said those exact words.
It was
55-foot Pillsbury
it was a 55-foot
Doughboy.
Pillsbury Doughboy riding on Shamu.
The one year where there was some drama was in 1990. They had Bart Simpson was the grand marshal. And there was a lot in the paper where people were really upset, adults in particular.
Because he's not wholesome?
Yes, because they didn't think that was a good character for kids to look up to.
I can see that. 90s.
But the kids who were quoted were really into it, so.
But I think it's such a nostalgia thing, too, to think that the parents are getting up in arms about a cartoon character that's the grand marshal of a Mother Goose parade. I think that's neat.
Well, I mean, it's the same time they could have had like Al Bundy instead.
Yeah.
You know?
I like that Bart Simpson was the grand marshal of the Mother Goose Parade.
Yeah.
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were there one year, which I would have been really excited about. Bugs Bunny. This one I thought of you, Sean. The Noid was there.
Oh, avoid the Noid. Yeah, there was a Nintendo game. Was it Yo Noid, or was it Avoid the Noid then? Or I think it was Yo Noid.
Yeah, it could have been.
Yeah.
So during the 50s, the parade expanded from just floats involving Mother Goose. That was still kind of their main thing, but they start to let in other stuff. There was, for instance, these are just instances, a Sword of the Stone float, a Gulliver's Travels float. So it had to stay kid themed, but they kind of expanded what you were allowed to do. Floats were judged on workmanship, originality, and parade crowd reaction. In 1971, a nudist club won Best Float with a float whose theme was There Was a Crooked Man. Over the years, more product placement became part of the parade. For instance, Bob's Big Boy had a float, as did Der Wiener Schnitzel, which made me think of you, Charles.
I love the fact that it was called Der Wiener Schnitzel. I was very excited when they brought back that ad campaign.
And I think one of the reasons this starts to happen is because it's expensive to put parades on. And so this kind of maybe helps with that.
Well, and I can imagine that not only is the parade expensive, but the cost before and after getting the town ready for that many people.
Yeah.
It's probably a year-long commitment.
Oh, it's gotta be, right?
It's just, I bet there's like a committee that it's their job.
Yeah.
It never
yeah.
stops.
No,
the parade
it has to.
ends, they're on to the next one.
Right.
So the parade was mainly put on through donations, but in 1982, some people in El Cajon wanted to keep the parade going forward, and they wanted to make it even bigger and gain some national attention. So every year the parade had about a $70,000 budget. And as I said, that was mainly donations, but it was difficult to maintain a parade of that size. It was already, they needed more money already, just with the parade size it was. There were things I never thought of when putting on a parade. Apparently the Grand Marshal of the parade is paid. I did not know that.
For what?
Being the Grand Marshal.
Well,
so,
I mean, they're getting like big people to be Bart Simpson, so you got to pay the Fox Entertainment. I mean, I don't know who.
Well, no, I mean you're paying for the. I get. Are you saying that they're? If I'm a Grand Marshal of the Mother Goose Parade, I get a paycheck?
well, I kind of always thought in a parade you're getting exposure, right? So,
Right.
like if you Bart Simpson's in the parade, that's good for you and your TV show. But this is, I guess it was up to every celebrity and it would be different depending on who you get. So one year they really want to get, for instance, they want to get Farrah Fawcett, but she won't do it unless she gets $50,000 to be in the parade.
To sit on
And
a
their
float.
budget is $70,000.
Wow.
So they can't afford that. That's just an example. I said that Bob Hope, who I think has been in a lot of parades over the years, would do them often. The parade would give $10,000 to his favorite charity. It didn't sound like he got money for himself, but
No, yeah,
that kind of thing.
I can see doing something like that, but
well, and the people who come in to, because it sounds like a lot of the same people who go around for different like fairs and stuff with crafts or things to sell. There was like a pretzel guy who sells pretzels. You paid money to be able to do that at the parade.
I can
And it
see
was
that.
really, it was like $2 for most of the years, I think up until the 80s or 90s. It was always just $2. And then because the parade is so expensive to put on, they were looking for like $100 or a couple $100 to have people do that. So they're really in need of another way to fund the parade.
I can see that being, over the years being involved in community activities or, work functions where you had vendors come in, especially people that are trying to sell something. If a crowd like this, you're guaranteed to make money back. It's only right that you offer up some to offset that cost a little bit.
Well, and if you do have a hotel or a local business, the business you do on this day or this weekend could really make you for the rest of the year. So it's really important for them to have people who are draws to continue to have a good parade. But it's hard to do that without the money. So the other thing is that the parade is carried, as we said, on local TV in San Diego and Los Angeles. And in the 1980s, they really want as their goal to have it carried nationally, like how we watched the Macy's Day Parade. But I didn't realize they were paying for it to be aired locally. I just kind of assumed, I don't know what I think, things don't cost money, but just assumed it was good for them to have something to air.
The network would just say, hey, you got a parade, let's put it on.
Yeah, so that's another cost. So they needed to increase their budget, so they put Proposition R on the ballot. It would have raised a small tax on El Cajon residences for 3 years to raise money for the parade. Each household would have contributed $5 a year if it had passed. It didn't pass, with 76% of residents voting no. And it seemed in the paper this was really less about the parade and more about Proposition 13, which was statewide. We kind of briefly talked about it in the Steven Steiner episodes. It had some unintended consequences, and one of those was really not getting people excited about paying more taxes.
So that comes through, and then people associate all taxes with Prop 13.
Yeah, it had a huge effect on
Right.
especially cities and how education is paid for. It still exists, but yeah, they were not really ready. Even though this was a local, it'd be your city ballot, just seemed like they kept mentioning it as if it was connected.
Oh, so it's, yeah.
So they were all for the parade, specifically because it brings a lot of business to the area. It's good for El Cajon.
And $5 per person a year tax.
Well, it's per household.
Oh, so it's even less than
depending on your household, but yeah.
Yeah.
As a result, they realized they're not going to have the money. They start to look at moving the parade to San Diego. A theory, because San Diego might have more options for paying for it. Mm-hmm. They can absorb the costs. But the people of El Cajon, they don't want to move the parade. They want to keep it. So the parade has the support, but the increasing the budget doesn't. So after 1982, the parade gets smaller. There's lesser floats, participation goes way down, and there aren't as many people every year that go to it. And that lasts till now. It's a much smaller parade.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it had its peak.
Mm-hmm. But because of budget issues, it doesn't have the ability to put as many floats to do all the things they did before. Although I will say I contacted the parade on Facebook because it was posting pictures and stuff. It should happen the Sunday before we post these episodes, but they never got back to me because I was looking for a way for us to, I was hoping it would be streamed or something. We could watch it. We could put this out before and people who listened could get excited and watch it. Not that we made it super exciting, but hopefully.
They don't have the staff.
And they never got back to me, so I don't know. Which is not me being angry. Like you're saying, I have no idea.
They may not have the staff to run a...
Right.
I mean, if it's now primarily volunteer and there's no money, it's another sad state of, things going away when we're always talking about when we're not recording. We're always talking about things like when we were kids or younger. I think it's still cool though that the town does still want, that it rallies around and it means something enough to the town that they've kept it.
I mean, it's been going, I think this is 72nd year, if I'm doing my math correctly, which I may not be. The only time they've ever had to, it's gone on every single year. One of the only times they've ever had to move it was when President Kennedy was assassinated.
They moved the parade?
Yeah, they had to move it. That happened, I think, the same weekend they were supposed to have the parade. So they moved it to the following.
Oh, they moved
weekends.
The date of the parade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I mean, it's kind of rain or shine. This has gone on. And I can't even imagine how many people have memories of this parade with the hundreds of thousands who've gone through there.
And this is another instance. I love our state. Lived here my entire life, born and raised, never heard of this parade. And now I desperately want to go to El Cajon to see this parade.
Yeah, I'll go with you.
Okay.
Have a float.
Will it be dedicated to their high school?
If they pay me enough.
You should, since you brought it up, you should see what the high school floats look like every year. If they're as big as and nice as the high school.
Oh, I thought you were going to suggest that we get a California true crime float in the parade.
No, I was talking about like the high school there. If it's
like a super nice float.
Yeah, they have like several bands and they have some sort of fame. One of them has a famous robed. They called the Red Robed Choir, I think was what it was called. So I can only imagine their floats are amazing.
Now I'm stuck on this idea of us getting a float in some parade.
Right,
just some parade.
I'm
we'll
ready.
Start our own. We can just go walk down the street on Sunday and see if anyone's
see what the people that follow. Yeah. California True Crime Meetup.
So we asked on Twitter for our listeners to kind of share some of their traditions. We have a couple of those to share with you. So in response to a question about, I think it was a poll actually about whether people, even not everybody I know even likes Thanksgiving. So whether they celebrate it and like it, whether it's just a day off for them. Historical Blindness, which is a friend podcast, said their tradition is that after too many hard ciders, I will gesture rudely with turkey drumstick as my mouth full of stuffing. I lecture my family about the myths surrounding the first Thanksgiving.
I've actually done the same thing at our family's Thanksgiving.
One of our longtime listeners is Kimmy, and she said that she considers Thanksgiving a time for family and friends, but you can have Christmas taken off the calendar. I thought those were
so she's
fighting words for you two.
She's in my camp.
No,
Kimmy, I appreciate that.
It's totally fine. Everyone has their own thoughts. Some are horrible, but everyone has their own.
Well, Kimmy's amazing, so.
She is wonderful, and even more so now that I know she's a Thanksgiving person.
Yeah, she says she hasn't had anything up at Christmas for about 18 years, which it is a lot of work. We have Santa actually comes to our house every year, so we do a lot of lights and stuff, and it is a lot of work to put all that up. Sean, you know.
Yes.
Since you're doing it for like 2 months.
Well, I'm not doing what you guys do. I put up like a string of lights just in everyone. I'm not like, going all out because I can barely. That would mean I would have to get on the third step of a ladder, which freaks me out. So,
well, to be perfectly honest, I do very little.
That's true. I can confirm.
Jess does most of the decoration, and we have quite a bit of family that comes and helps.
Yeah, I just like to make it where it feels like it is.
I love the lights. Jennifer from Fading Memories podcast, which is a podcast where Jennifer talks about her mom who has Alzheimer's, and she kind of talks about and goes over the emotional aspects of that and also the practical aspects for people. It's a really great podcast. I don't have anyone in my life who's going through Alzheimer's in particular, but I think for anyone who has an elderly parent or someone who's been sick, there's a lot of practical insurance or just dealing with it and changing your life. I found it helpful as a podcast, so people should listen to it. She said that it's a challenge with mom having Alzheimer's, but she enjoys family, so we'll see how it goes. Scaling down and changing traditions is its own challenge, which kind of ring true through the years.
Yeah, that's always I think we've all dealt with that at some point or another, is when you have a tragedy in your family, and then that first holiday after is tough, and then trying to build new traditions that honor what came before, but are different enough that you can feel happy. That can be a really tricky thing.
Well, yeah, and she's working on restructuring, I think, a life so that her mom can enjoy it. And
yeah. No.
So hopefully she'll have some ideas after that for our podcast to talk about how people can deal with upcoming holidays. And our last one, and I'm hoping I'm saying this right, is Coilette, and she said that she liked the first two options I gave, which were the food and stuff and the days off. Food with a lot of exclamation marks and days off, which I really enjoy, that Thanksgiving is on a Thursday and then people have that Friday off, because I feel like you get like a longer weekend to recoup. Sometimes the holidays it's like traveling somewhere. It takes it out of you.
Do you guys do any Black Friday rush?
No, I do not.
No, I have been. I think a few times. I've had friends and family. I actually have my sister-in-law used to, back in the day. That was a thing that she did with her mom. Would get up really early, and they would go and then do all of the shopping. I went out a few times with friends after the fact. Like, we would go out and just watch people.
Right.
But weirdly enough, actually, a friend where I used to live, my next door neighbor, that was his tradition. He would go to his family's. Ron would go to his family's for Thanksgiving. They'd eat, and then he would sit down with his relatives. They would plan out, and then that night they would go out, and he would get like one thing. That was just huge shopping with that.
Yeah, I've done what you have done, where my friend who really didn't like crowds or anything like that, for some reason he didn't mind the mall. And we would always go on Black Friday, but we would go. It was usually more in the afternoon. It was still insane, but we wouldn't even buy anything. We would just walk around, people watch, and stuff like that. But mainly just like hit the upper floor and do a couple laps, and then just watch people. It was fun.
I don't. Jess, do you?
No, never. It's just never.
You wait for Cyber Monday.
No, I don't really do any of it. Well, Cyber Monday, maybe. I guess I don't ever really think I've participated.
No,
I'm trying to think. I can understand the lure of it, but I'm not going to stand in line. Just going to rest at home and eat leftovers.
Yeah, I think that's another big tradition for a lot of us. I don't know. I know we get together with friends and family we can't see on the actual day. We'll do the big Friday. Not quite
like we have our
Thanksgiving.
poker night. Back in the day, we used to go to Lions.
Right.
When Lions was around, and a lot of people would get like a dessert. I would just drink coffee and like hang out and drink soda. Also, drink coffee and soda, and just be raging when everyone fell asleep. So I'd probably just watch horrible movies. But yeah,
I do remember that, and I remember when I got old enough then. Because we did the same thing, like a local all-night diner or something that you can, and then got older enough, would then go to like the local bar, because it's Thanksgiving weekend, and you're like college time, friends and stuff you, like you said, hadn't seen for a year, home for college.
But then at the same time, after I got a little older, I liked ditching that part because there was a lot of people I didn't want to see from back in the day.
Or sometimes like a high school reunion on those weekends.
It was not fun.
No.
Yeah.
I'm good with just resting and ignoring people.
Yeah.
Oh, eat leftovers, watch terrible TV. Well, I think that's it. That brings us to the end of our first Thanksgiving holiday episode. We hope you've enjoyed listening to us and kind of ramble on about an amazing parade and some history and our own and traditions. And thank you for listening to another episode of California True Crime.